Hey, it's been far too long. As you can tell by the title, I have recorded and indeed released an EP in the style of Soul Niger Within. So if you want to skip forward and just listen to the EP, mixed, mastered, vocals and everything, the timestamps have already gone. So I assume you're here to hear some of the motivation, some of the cool musical features. Just hear me ramble about it a little bit. I hope you're all doing well, and it's good to be back. So without further ado, let's start looking at this project. So in the end, it's about 8 minutes 30. And there's a few bits and pieces. I should explain how I got here. So what happened was Turiginius, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, released a huge video lesson on how Alan Holdsworth plays, and I was like, wow, finally I can learn to play like the Meister. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to play over that kind of like jazz fusion soundtrack. I mean, like, I can't, don't get me wrong, I can't, but what I really wanted to play over was like heavier grooves. And I've done a few guitar solos over heavy stuff on this channel. But I wanted to take it a little level further and actually incorporate some jazz elements, some modal playing, some key changes, more diverse phrasing and structure. And so what I did was I put together some backing tracks in the style of Soul Niger Within, because that's like a jazzy, heavy context to practice my Alan Holdsworth style licks on. And then I went, wait a minute, I'm like, I have a bunch of rhythm stuff that sounds like Soul Niger Within. I'm going to do the solos. I just need some vocals, some transitions, some big riffs, and I have an EP. So yeah, that's what I did. So first of all, I'll be releasing all the backing tracks I made so that you can practice over some heavy jazz fusion backing tracks, because there's arguably nothing like them available at the minute on YouTube. So basically, these are like the coolest things I programmed, some little transitions, some big riffs. One of the things that really struck me when I listened to Soul Niger Within a few times before kicking this project off was it really is a jazz record. Like, some people describe it as a 40-minute drum solo. That's pretty accurate. So in metal music, generally speaking, right, it's riff-driven music. When you come to the climax of the song, there's a big riff. You might have noticed on this channel, I'm quite fond of big riffs. That's not how jazz fusion works. Jazz fusion is about improvised solos and interplay between the musicians. And that's a struggle to do for me, because I'm not a brilliant improviser. And I'm doing this as a solo project, basically. Another thing about Soul Niger Within is it doesn't stick to the Meshuggah calculator. So even when it does do a big heavy riff, they're fundamentally not structured like Meshuggah riffs, in that they're not always cut to 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars or whatever. They really are in odd time. So when I've got a heavy riff, I'm playing like real odd time heavy riffs. I tried to create some cool atmospheric stuff. I tried to create some interesting metric modulation stuff and push the envelope a little. And of course, I have a long, I have an extended saxophone solo. So let me show you a couple of the cool things, or things that I personally think are cool in this song. So in this section here, there's a kind of crazy tapping guitar solo, which I'm sure you're familiar with the style, but let's have a quick listen. So apart from my squinting there, what you might have cottoned onto is, if I turn off the guitar solo here, we have metric implied metric modulations happening in the drums. So it's like the opposite of that car bomb track, lights out. So the drums start off playing kind of quarter notes. Guitar is playing dotted eighths. And then the drums are going to move to playing every 5/16ths. And then every 7/16ths. And then finally here at the end, I've thrown in some toms and every 8/16 notes here. So the drums are kind of gradually slowing down. We're starting somewhere normal. We're getting weirder and weirder. And then we're back in normal land again. And so it was a real challenge to write a guitar solo over that. So yeah, you can see this was like 286th attempt, but I think I got something cool there. Another thing that's cool here is one of the problems that I faced was, how do you do anything like Sol Niger Within without a drummer of Morgan Agron's caliber available? Well, it turns out you can just buy a bunch of MIDI of his playing. And that's exactly what I did for this extended saxophone solo. So the sax and a fake Morgan are playing together here, which I kind of dug. Another thing I really enjoyed was this riff here. Right, it is the same groove as Bouncing in a Bottomless Pit, right? Just so we're clear where the groove comes from. The guitar rhythm. But this was cool for me because I'm so used to writing kind of like in that Meshuggah calculator style where everything lines up. Whereas this riff is in 3 bars of 3. So like if we listen to just the drums here. Yeah, it's cool. And that's probably one of my favorite riffs I've written in a while. Another thing is I'm trying to play with key changes or metric modulations or something more advanced than just kind of like, here's a 16-bar metal solo. So the first solo is over a kind of modal key change from Dorian. To Phrygian. Sorry, Phrygian dominant. And of course that's just the background. If you put it all together, it sounds like this. I like that one. And this isn't like the mixed, mastered, fully produced version. This is just kind of like before I sent it off to more talented people, Mr. No Oath. And then let me talk quickly about the structure, because I think that's kind of interesting, and I'll go into the lyrics and concept, because Sol Niger Within is a concept album. You know, this is a loving tribute. I had to do my best. Originally, I was going to be more ambitious and do a longer EP and stuff, but I figured if I'm going to ever release anything, I better get this out. So let's say you had some kind of Black Sun within, some kind of Sol Niger Within. So I took that both as a structural element, in terms of the arrangement of the piece, is a metaphor for an elliptical orbit of a dark star, and then the lyrics have a kind of like what would you call it, like a different emotional analogy for the same kind of concept. So we start, the first track is called Umbra Descent, right? So like that's into the shadow essentially. Imagine we start inside the asteroid belt, picking up speed towards our dark sun here. Then that's kind of a reasonably heavy track because we're like under that gravitational acceleration, pulling in here, making this harsh turn. Then Closed Universe is a track that starts kind of like dark and bleak, very soundscapey, as we're like going through the emptiness here, between the solar body and the asteroid belt at the midway point. So if this was the solar system, you'd have all the terrestrial planets are in this zone, then you have an asteroid belt, and you have the gas giants out here. So we're moving first through this kind of like relatively chill space, looking out at the blackness of extrasolar space, and then wham, like coming right through the asteroid belt, shit's getting heavy, confusing, and wild, and that's where we're having that metric modulation, tapping solo nonsense. Then here we go further, way out. So this is the Aphelion return trip. So we're going to start chill, get gradually more intense as we come back towards all the mass in the system. So this is a long instrumental saxophone solo. It's all chill, zero reflection, again, very heavy as we come back through the asteroid belt. And that's a track that ends the EP, and it ends with the same material, the same musical motif that starts Umbra Descent. So we've made a full orbit. So let me play the first piece of material here is this riff. And then we come back a bit slightly heavier and slower at the end. And with vocals and stuff, and Leo, as usual, brings his A game here on the vocals. So that's the structure of the piece, right? And originally I was going to flesh it out more and visit some planets and stuff, but I just, you got to call it done at some point. So when I had a loop I was happy with, I kind of called it there. Lyrically, so this is kind of the stuff I shoot off to Leo for vocals. So it's got like what kind of style we're doing, where do the important syllables land. But yeah, let's just go to just the lyrics themselves. Okay. So, I thought a little bit about the original Sol Niger Within. Like, what would it mean to literally have a black sun within, And I thought there were two things that were kind of interesting to me. Well, there are a whole bunch of related things. So, first of all, let's take the notion that, that old saying, how come the speed of light is the fastest thing and darkness is always there before it, and the idea of being super negative in your perceptions. So if you did indeed have a dark sun within, there's this interesting idea that you could see reflected darkness and everything, and some people are like that. They always see the worst possible case, and they think everything is dark, but it's actually them, right? The saying I always like is, if everything smells like shit, check your shoes. So this is a piece kind of from the perspective of someone who perhaps needs to check their shoes. And then we look at a few other things, and there's a few pop culture references, of course. So throughout, there's this kind of like Latin English thing, right? Because that's fun. It's a reference to the title, like of Sol Niger Within. This is, of course, partly a literal callback to the theme of orbit and travel in space, but it's a reference to the Mighty Boosh, which I deeply love, and of course is the only piece of pop culture I know that references Alan Holdsworth directly.
Oh my God, Alan Holdsworth.
Again here, so we're looking at the kind of person who wallows in negativity. In Closed Universe, we kind of explore the rational basis for extreme negativity. So if you think about it, at the end of the day, if you accept that that the universe is a closed system, the heat death of the universe is inevitable. So you have this metaphor of like old light, looking up at, thinking of the light as a source of hope, and then if you look up at the night sky, it is of course mostly black. It's not mostly light. So we have a shared origin, Big Bang, and then our fate is indeed a dark future, a relatively cold heat death of the universe. The iron laws of causality is of course a Berserk reference, as well as being the fact that if you are hyper negative, you can see this kind of the heat death of the universe inevitability is a kind of inevitable thing, right? I believe the science on that is not settled yet. The Aphelion return trip here, the key thing for me thematically was that it started chill and got wilder and wilder as we came back, and Juan really killed it on this. So thank you so much for the core, like the middle of the piece that has to tie it all back together. Zero reflection then. This is kind of like the piece that ties us back. This is kind of like so zero reflection is partly a pun on the fact that the what would you say, the narrative perception is not self-examined. Right? If this viewpoint of extreme negativity was actually to examine itself, it might find some causes for hope, but there is zero reflection. Also, if you were shining darkness, it wouldn't reflect, right? Reflection is a thing light does. Anyway, lots of kind of vague layering here. Equation of my life, zero sum. I mean, obviously it's just some cold stuff you can say before you launch into a guitar solo, but again, it's calling back to that heat death of the universe kind of thing. The idea that there's no more energy, you know, once you leave life, you eventually everything you put into it goes back to nothing. This, it's pretty much a kind of like Meshuggah phrased version of the major thesis here. And of course we've got to end with a callback to Sol Niger within the true daddy work here. So yeah, if you're watching this, this is now available. I've released it as Helio Cloning Project. The album is called Inanus Without. I want to thank Leo for the vocals, Juan for the sax, and Modern Nihilism Recordings, aka No Oath, for all the sick sound design work, for the mixing and mastering. It actually sounded too big when it first came back. I had to say, hey, like, solos need to come out in front because this is a jazzy, well, sort of a jazz fusion record. But yeah, like next time I want to do something and have it sound really huge and heavy, I cannot wait to hear what he does with it. Thanks for everyone who's watching this. I know it's been a long wait. I've got a few riffs on the go, but I've been having so much fun making original stuff. I don't want to commit to any kind of upload schedule. Please leave any comments, questions, whatever. I do read them all. I'll try to get back to many of them. Thank you for everything. I really hope you enjoy it. Take care.
Go with us now on a journey through time and space, as we bathe in the far regions of the black sun within. to suffer, to embrace the misery, vanicat in space. I am the flow in my system, reflected